Welcome to the Liberty Insider. This is a program bringing you analysis, up-to-date news, and principles so that you can judge religious liberty developments in the US and around the world. My name is Lincoln Steed, and my guest is Andy Im. I do a double take on your last name because I have another contact with a very similar last name, but nobody quite like you, and your job is very important as communication director for the Michigan Seventh Adventist Church Division, and as I've said a number of times before, working with Campus Crusade for young people, very significant with religious liberty. And dealing with young people, I know you not only know how they operate, you operate like them, because you are still young.
I am.
And a characteristic of the younger generation is to be very computer literate, isn't it?
Yes.
And I myself use the computer from time to time, and I realize that the world is at your fingertips. You know, you just punch a couple of buttons and it's like you're in the public library, or better. Videos and blogs and music, whatever you want. Is this information conduit to the younger generation? Is it working to their advantage or ours? What's your judgment on this?
I think the access to the information can be both good and bad. I think it's bad in the sense that people or young people now can just pick and choose what they want to hear. And that's not good in the objective sense because you're not getting a wide variety of views. Now you can just pick and choose what you want to hear. And so that's not necessarily positive. Another thing, for example, to give a specific example with YouTube, you know, it's really clips, little sound bites, 1-minute clips of things that various popular figures are saying, and you know, they get millions and millions of hits, and so that begins to shape their views on a wide range of things, from politics to social norms and so forth. And so there's, I would say, a lot of dangerous or negative components to that.
Yeah. Yep, I agree with your point, although I'm a YouTube user.
I am
as
too.
I drive to work.
Yes.
And I watched actually yesterday, I watched a 3-hour documentary on YouTube. They're not all clips.
Yes.
It was a history of the czars in Russia. I don't think it's the length so much. I think it's what often is missing is context. And it seems to me education is not just absorbing facts. Mm-hmm. If that were the case, then people with photographic memories would rule the world. Mm-hmm. But they don't, because they don't necessarily synthesize it correctly.
That's right.
And a lot of the input or the reaction to their information are postings from other people. Mm-hmm. And I think that's positively degrading of, from what I've seen, of real knowledge. But perhaps that's what the Bible says, forever learning and never arriving at the truth.
Yes.
But information is more accessible than ever before. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
And I know you have a burden, as many in our religious liberty fraternity do, that we need to be careful about conspiracy theories.
Yes.
And there's no question the internet exists on conspiracy theories on one level. It's not the only thing. But if you are a conspiracy theorist, that's the happy hunting ground.
That's right, and it really satisfies our curiosity for the sensational and that kind of thing. And I think we need to ensure that as Christians, that doesn't become our message. I have been to some gatherings, if you will, where the entire sermon was just simply a conspiracy theory. And I think that's dangerous. You know, there's a lot of rhetoric too today of this anti-mainstream media movement, and I understand that a lot of times the parent organizations of these news companies, they do have agendas. It's no secret. It's not a conspiracy. That's widely understood. The flip side of that is you also don't want some 18-year-old, 20-year-old, and I'm not being pejorative to the age, but some young person sitting in a basement and, you know, having millions of followers, and he's just ranting off his opinions on various events, whether it involves politics or other social concerns. And so I think we need to be balanced.
Well,
Yes.
I agree
Go
with
ahead,
you,
yes.
but you painted a sad picture there. Does that differ very much from a frustrated I'm trying to think how to characterize the guy.
Yes.
Frustrated revolutionary, but it's not the best word I was looking for. Sitting in prison, writing a little crazy pamphlet that stirred the whole country.
Yeah.
I mean, in essence, that's what Adolf Hitler did with
Yes.
Mein Kampf.
Yes.
Same thing, but now it's accessible to any, not any, but selected bloggers who could get a big enough following.
Yeah.
The ideas are probably just as crazy, but they hunt out their fellows all around. It's an interesting dynamic, and
It is.
I don't think anyone quite yet knows what to make of it.
Yeah.
But from all that I can observe, I don't really think societal knowledge is much advanced by it. Information is available, but understanding is obscure as ever.
Yeah. I think as with any discipline, I believe very strongly that it's important to find out who the players are in any given discussion. There are editorialists, there are writers who are respected within the field of journalism that do their best to remain objective. And of course, there's no, as you and I know, there's no true objectivity when you're reporting
everyone has a viewpoint.
On news. People insert their viewpoint, and we're not going to be able to run away from that. Even Christianity is a viewpoint. You know, it is a biased viewpoint, and so we just need to be responsible, is my point.
And as far as religious liberty and being sensitive to what's happening in this regard around the world, I think to go to many sources is good.
That's right.
I have people that phone me up. They're on some right-wing religionist source, and of course they exaggerate everything for fundraising, if for nothing else.
Yeah.
And people can get a very skewed view. And I originally came from Australia. It was long, long ago.
Yeah.
And I've been back many times.
Yeah.
But that sort of gives me I look from an outsider's viewpoint, and it's very obvious. Most anyone outside the US knows that the news is not very comprehensive or balanced in the US.
That's
I
right.
don't think that's particularly from design.
Yeah.
I think it's from several sources. First of all, this is a big enough country to be so many things happening, you get self-absorbed, so it's not very outward looking. And then the news that it gets is filtered through so many agencies, and particularly in the US, coloured by a besetting sin of America, but it's also tied up to its great strength, that we imagine that everybody else thinks like us. Elsewhere in the world, their thought processes are different.
Yeah.
Their reality norms are totally different. They can say something that, even if it's translated accurately, which it's often not,
Yeah.
it can still mean something different to them than to us. The way we get over it, I see it all the time. Oh, he said that for domestic consumption, but he doesn't mean that.
Yeah.
That's not good. But I think what's really going on, and I see this at work, is that with the computerization revolution, traditional print media and news media is on hard times.
Yes.
Remember the Christian Science news service, the Monitor, and that all went out of business, cut down to almost nothing. And you can see signs of that when you go to events in Washington. There's not that many reporters. They don't have the facility with them. and they don't have the time or the charter to go on investigative journalism. So they go to the meeting, they come in the door, and there's the handout. And I get those handouts, and I'll see them printed in the newspaper without comment. That's not really journalism, because the people in power, whether they're government leaders or even church leaders, they love you to be promulgators of their viewpoint.
That's right.
It's in the questioning that you get to the truth.
Yeah.
So we have a lazy, I just put it, and of course there's no question that more and more the universities are pouring out people are of a secular mindset. So the reporters themselves may have a somewhat bias against, say, religion.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the main thing. I think it's just the superficiality. And then, as we saw during, or right after 9/11, there was self-censorship in the US that didn't really serve the US well.
I want to add to, because you mentioned the word superficial. Ultimately the news organizations and bloggers and so forth, ultimately they have an incentive to either make money or to increase their audience. And so a lot of times, even many of the serious news organizations are moving towards more entertainment news and that kind of thing.
Oh, that's a corrupting part of the... You'll get as much time given to... some dog was shot. A pit bull was shot in a neighbourhood because it ran amok, than perhaps the genocide in Rwanda or something.
Exactly.
That is more of a phenomenon than the US and other countries. I mean, that's not unknown other places, but there's a huge imbalance.
Yeah.
And it largely is an entertainment venue. But you can get the news if people want to.
Yeah.
I better not name newspapers because that'll throw a bias, but there's some more serious newspapers in the US.
Absolutely.
And you can go online and different news services from Holland and Germany, BBC, even Russian TV. Even if you allow it's biased, it's another viewpoint, and then you can synthesize that with ours.
Well, and that's typically my practice, and I'm not saying people should follow what I do, but I tend to read from organizations that are right-leaning, are left-leaning, are more moderate, and then synthesize the information and data. And
then if you know how news works, you can sort of see through a lot of it.
That's right.
I've been to some demonstrations, and there might just be 50 people there.
Yeah.
And they'll have them clustered together, or else frame it where they're clustered together. And you watch the evening news, and all you see in front of the camera are milling, yelling people. Maybe nothing around it. The traffic's going by as normal. Yeah. So it can create a huge misperception about what's really going on. It's not that it's factually wrong, but it's misrepresenting what went on.
What's really happening, absolutely.
But what troubled me more than anything, and I'm building to a point here, after 9/11, and I don't think it would have mattered greatly which administration were in charge, but I think the one we had at the time had a certain vested interest in encouraging some of the worst tendencies, hiding things and encouraging others. And the media should have seen it. They probably knew it, but they didn't call it. And some horrific things were not mentioned, like one that still sticks in my mind. The Washington Post, a few days after 9/11, ran a picture with a caption, but no comment, of the brother of the then president shaking Osama bin Laden's brother's hand, just signed a big multi-billion-dollar business deal in Saudi Arabia. That was it. No comment. Normally that would be subject to a little question. How come they're still in business with the family? And the Republic didn't rise or fall on it, but to me it showed that there was reticence to deal with real topics. Some things were hands off. Yeah. And so we can say proudly we don't have censorship. But why censor if you've created the same thing through intimidation? We'll be back after a short break. Stay with us.